the most fundamental aspect of a wetland is obviously the water, right? But it's something that, as silly as it may sound, we can sometimes forget about. So it is easy to get ahead of ourselves with planting and fencing, but it's really important to consider hydrology first. If you fence, as Jason was saying earlier, if you fence things and plant things up and then the water maybe rises, you might find you're having to re-fence again and replant areas because the water level has changed. We need to understand where the water is now, how it's moving through the system, and we need to do this before we start any planting or any fencing. And it may be that the first step actually needs to be a focus on increasing water retention, or maybe re-wetting systems that have been historically drained, or even putting in sediment traps so that we're not getting heaps of sediment going through and clogging a wetland up. But as we all know as well, the hydrology of a wetland can vary so much. So for instance, a wetland in one catchment might vary very much to another in another part of that catchment or in a different catchment. A wetland in the headwaters will be very different hydrological regime to one that is on the coast. If we're looking at ways to maybe increase the amount of water in a system, or how and where the water is held in that system, the way we approach that will look quite different for different wetlands. We want to know what the water is doing, where it's going, and a lot of the time, it's not as simple as just the water goes in and the water goes out. Wetlands are inherently very complex systems, and there might be lots of different ways that the water's going in and lots of different ways that the water's going out. When a hydrologist will come and do some kind of hydrological assessment, what might that look like? So there are a couple of tools that we have in our toolbox. So things like putting fluorescent dye through the water to see where it's going. You might do the same with salt, so you can sort of trace that through the system, see what the water's actually doing. You can kind of do the same in some systems by just throwing in a stick or a tennis ball and seeing where it goes. It can sometimes be really difficult to see where the water's actually going just by looking at it, especially if it's moving very slowly, but those are some little tricks and techniques that we can use when we do a proper assessment of these systems to see what's really happening. I think the crux of it is, don't underestimate the importance of water levels and the water in these systems. Get yourself a hydrological assessment and then go from there.